Welcome to the Cumberland West Railroad. This is David Parks' layout. My name is Leo Pesce. I've been coming here for about 15 years, so I have been involved with a lot of things that have happened on this layout. This layout is about 1,200 square feet in size. There is about 3,600 feet of track. The layout itself has actually two railroads. One is the B&O and one is the Western Maryland. The track length of each is about half and half. You have also the viewable layout, which is one layer. You have the ramps that come from staging to the viewable layout, and then the staging themselves. There are two staging levels. One is for the B&O and one for the Western Maryland. Each of the three, it's about 1,200 feet of track. The staging for the B&O is 20 tracks. Some tracks actually have two trains, and the Western Maryland has 15 tracks that can also have two trains per track. This layout was built specifically to be an operational layout. There is about 20 to 25 people that are needed to run the B&O and about 18 to 20 to run the Western Maryland. We've had sessions where both railroads actually were running with about 40 to 45 people total through the day. So it's a very complex operation to do all of this. Where we are standing right now is where staging is run. You have two sets of computers where one usually is the outbounds and the other one is inbounds if we run one railroad. If we run two railroads, then one becomes the Western Maryland and one becomes the B&O. We have dispatchers in two separate rooms, one for the B&O and one for the Western Maryland. And then we also have positions on the layout for the towers. We actually have about 6 towers throughout the layout. One thing about the computers and the system that we're using for running the railroad is that we're using GMRI. All the systems that we have, and that includes about 11 computers, all run GMRI to run the towers, the dispatcher or dispatchers, and the staging. The B&O is run on towers, and the Western Maryland is run on TTNTO.
Hi, I'm David Baird. I'm the assistant staging manager here in the Cumberland West. And we are about to see one of the Baltimore and Ohio trains come out of staging and get on the main layout. The B&O ran a lot of coal trains, and so this train is full of coal and it's going east toward the ports. This area depicts Terra Alta. This is one of the 3 staging portals for the B&O. And normally what would happen from staging is that a computer script would drive the train from the staging yard up to this tunnel portal and stop, and then be handed off to a road crew who would then drive it through the layout. In this scene, the B&O coal train is coming down the 17-mile grade, and it is going to cross over the Bloomington Viaduct over the Potomac River at the same time as a Western Maryland train goes underneath it in a parallel fashion. As in real life, the Bloomington Viaduct actually has 2 different faces. They were built at different times. So one is a concrete face and the other is a stone arch. Our coal train is rounding the bend across from the paper plant at Luke, and we will see close-ups of that industry upcoming. Continuing on past the town of Piedmont, and coming into Kaiser Yard, which for the B&O was the main classification yard for coal. And this is an opportunity to swap crews and locomotives. We will pick up more on the B&O over in the Narrows heading towards Cumberland Station.
What we're looking at is the viaduct tower. This is done in GMRI. It's a CTC panel, and it controls all of the turnouts within the viaduct and the west end of Cumberland West station, and also the entrance and exit of the west end of the yard. Right now, the turnouts are set for the viaduct itself, but we have a train that is coming up the Narrows. This is a passenger train, and what we're going to do is we're going to set the turnouts so that they are aligned for the train to come in into the station, and then we're going to set the signals for it to proceed. So what we do is basically over here we see that it is 227 and 228 that need to be thrown. So we select those and then we code it. And there they go. And now we're going to set the signals, which is this one to go eastbound. And I believe that's the only one that needs to be done. And there it goes. The B&O used a round type of signals which has about 9 lights. Red is across, green is vertical, yellow, which is diagonal, and restricted, which is the other way of the diagonal. And usually the restricted is used to enter yards in our case. There is 2 other lights in the signal, which is the upper and the lower markers. Our signals here have all of that, but we don't use all of the aspects. We only use 9 out of the 13. 9 is still a lot of aspects, but with the electronics that we have, we used to have, 9 was the maximum. Because we're running LCC today, theoretically, we could implement all 13 aspects.
Our Capital Limited passenger train is coming through what is called the Narrows, which is a constricted point in the valley of the Potomac River. It will come around the bend and slowly come past Viaduct Junction and into Cumberland Station. We'd like to point out that the Cumberland Station is painted onto the backdrop, but it has some nice 3D effects provided by actual architectural elements placed on the surface to give it a 3D effect. We definitely want to mention the artistry of Mike Katowski, who is pretty well known in the Bay Area for painting the calendars for Orchard Supply hardware many years ago. But Mike was hired to do a lot of the backdrops and scenery elements of this Cumberland West layout. Our passenger train now departs Cumberland Station. goes around the peninsula and past Evetts Freight Yard. Evetts Yard was the main freight yard for the B&O, whereas we saw the Kaiser Yard previously it was for coal. These are more for general freight. Our passenger train will disappear off the main part of the layout and into staging.
Staging is divided into two levels. We have the B&O level, which is right here, and then we have the Western Maryland level. The B&O has 20 tracks, and most of them can handle two separate trains. The Western Maryland is 15 tracks. There's a total of about 1,200 cars between the two railroads. The majority of the cars are hoppers, which are divided half and half between empty and coal loads. The layout has about 2/3 of its tracks are under the layout. The trains that you're seeing here are all set up for operations. One thing about this layout being operational is the fact that you have a lot of trains here in staging. And if you run everything manually, it takes 3 to 4 people to just handle staging itself. So GMRI has come to the rescue for us. And this is way from the beginning, basically, where all the trains now are run automatically out of staging to what we call portals. The portal is where a crew takes over the train and brings it on the layout. And same thing is coming back into staging, where the B&O specifically has predetermined locations for the trains to come back to. The Western Maryland is a little different, so it's a little more dynamic. Sometimes staging needs to create warrants to run the train on the fly, but it all works out.
My name is Lawrence Crowell. I'm going to give you a tour of the Western Maryland Railroad. It ran on timetable and train order, so it's a little bit more relaxed than the Baltimore and Ohio. And we're going to start here in the Connellsville staging portal. This train is an AlphaJet train, which was a multi-railroad fast manifest freight, so it has high priority coming through the region of the railroad. We're coming around the Frostburg station, and if you look up on the hill, you'll see the effectiveness of forced perspective with N-scale structures on an HO layout. As we continue on, we encounter another coal mine. And we now head into Homesteader's Curve, as everyone familiar with the Western Maryland knows. Our train is now coming out of the Cumberland Narrows, where it brushes elbows with the Baltimore and Ohio, and we're moving into the Cumberland station area. We'll be passing under the B&O viaduct and passing the iconic Queen City Brewery. and moving into the siding of the station before entering the yard arrival track. While the Western Maryland 2 is traversing the layout, we will change our attention to a local freight. This freight is coming into the West Virginia Pulp and Paper Mill at Luke. We wanted to show you this mill because it is a signature industry, and the artist, Mike Katowski, did a masterful job of blending in the structures and the background and the curving wall of the background into a scene that hangs together. The Western Maryland 2 shows up and is passing Luke on its way to Elkins Junction. The WM2 is now traveling along the Potomac River. It crosses under the B&O Railroad, and it passes the Mastello Mine. Coal mines were very important to the region because the major revenue for the railroads and the people came from coal mines. This kind of scene is very common on the railroad. The WM2 now approaches the Elkins Junction. The Y here is important for passenger operations because after it drops off the passengers, the locomotive will come here and use the Y to turn around, getting ready for the next train out. We're heading into the station now, where we'll pass the business car and stop at the station.
One thing that we should talk about now is the electronics that are involved with this layout. This is a very complex layout, and with all the signaling, the sensor for blocks, all the turnouts, there is a requirement for electronics to perform, and there is a requirement for a lot of electronics. With that in mind, this layout has been also used as a testbed for new products that are currently on the market or were currently on the market in previous years. Speaking specifically, this layout was built with all Digitrax equipment. Then when LCC was announced, eventually the layout moved to the LCC products, where today it's everything else is LCC on this layout. This layout, the size of it, it's not a layout that one person can build. It required quite a few people to put it together. From the moment they started the design to building the structure of the layout, and then putting tracks, putting the electronics, putting scenery. One thing that is amazing about this layout is the painting of Mike Katowski. Everything that you saw in this layout that were on the wall or the separation panels were painted by Mike Katowski. Also, he's done a lot of the scenery with the trees, the rivers, the bridges. So a good part of this layout is his legacy also. But there is a lot of other people that have contributed to this layout, especially later on when it became operational. There is definitely a core group of people that always come here, and they know the ins and outs of this layout. Well, I hope you enjoyed the viewing on this layout as much as we enjoyed showing it to you. And thanks for watching.